Mallory, do you feel like we use a lot of emojis, like compared to your past work experiences?
Emojis in my past work life were like strictly unprofessional, don't do it. And so when I came here, like it was something that was hard to get used to. It's funny because I told Jamie, I was like, every time you do like a thumbs up on something that I do, I'm like, is that sarcasm? Like, what does that mean?
Yeah, we had that debate too when Adam got hired because he kept giving us the thumbs up. We're like, is he angry with us? And so we hashed that out pretty early. Slack's a very good tool that we use. We use Zoom. One of my very favorite softwares, this is going to sound so nerdy, is Lattice. Like, I love Lattice. I love
Lattice. And I'm not in people ops, and I'm obsessed with Lattice. I use it for my one-to-ones. I use it for everything.
I always say, let us be friends. It's a very bad joke that I say every onboarding. Marla's like, please stop saying this joke that you say every day, but I do.
This episode of Inside the Process is powered by Trainual, the one app that organizes who does what and how. Check it out at trainual.com.
Today is not about us, it's about you. So this is going to be jam-packed. Yeah, tons of dad jokes coming.
We are right now laying the groundwork for who is going to be leading tomorrow.
This song is such a jam.
Ideas don't build multi-million-dollar businesses. It's the implementation and execution of those ideas that do.
Self-made can lead to self-destruction. You are successful at what you give attention to.
This is why I was created. This is why I was made. I was made to do this.
It's about how to build your playbook.
That was such an incredible session.
Welcome to another episode of Inside the Process, the real-time podcast where we dive into all the best processes and practices to help you continue to improve and level up the work that you're doing.
Yeah, and the way we do that is we gather the greatest minds, the smartest folks who have the best thought leaders, who have all kinds of great ideas and strategies to chat with us, chat together, and share those so that we can all become better together. And you get to be a part of this, which is we're so excited about this. There's the chat. You can find that chat in the Zoom there. Open that up. Feel free to chat your questions at any point in time during the session. We will be monitoring those, and we'll get to learn here together.
Awesome. Well, I'm Mallory, a 10-year systems and ops veteran turned marketer, and I'm here with Shawn, the super awesome training and dev guy.
And we are your operations and training super duo and we are your hosts here on Inside the Process. And today we are just thrilled beyond anything else to introduce to you Tara Montoya. She's our people operations manager here at Trainual. She has put just everything that's amazing about our onboarding process here at Trainual. Tara has been an author of that. So really, really excited to hear a little bit more from her. She comes from Logan, Utah, Cache Valley. If you've ever been there, it's a beautiful little place. She's spent a lot of time in small business. She'll share a little bit more about that in a few moments. And then she finally came to us and made everything amazing for onboarding. So Tara, I'm going to pass it right on over to you so you can tell us a little bit more about your journey to getting to us here at Trainual.
Okay, great. Thanks, Shawn. It's so nice to see everyone or meet everyone, as Mallory said earlier. I am Tara Montoya. I am the People Operations Manager here at Trainual, and I will say I probably have the best job on earth. Definitely would debate that with anyone. So where did I get started? I have a very strong love for small business. It started at a very young age. My older sister had owned a few restaurants. And so during my high school experience / college experience, I worked at those restaurants. After graduation, I moved to Phoenix where I met my husband. We had our own small business for a number of years. Once we sold that, I thought, you know what, my work here is not done. And so I started working at a software company. I was in CX, so I'd work with customers and small business owners on their marketing plan, and I'd help them implement the software and make their business plans come true or dreams come true there. And then I got this awesome opportunity to transition over to ASU to work in the Center for Entrepreneurship. It was newly founded, and so I went in there and helped create that program from the ground up, which was a great experience, just giving back to the community and the students and other small business owners. Then I had the opportunity to do my own startup for a while. It was called My Little Mascara Club, very similar to Dollar Shave Club. It was mascara that we would ship to your home. I was the head of operations there. And then now I'm here at Trainual in the people operations field. And again, like I just said, I think I probably have the best job out there.
Amazing. I did not know you had such a diverse and rich background and a fellow ops person. I should have known that because you're also Six Sigma certified, right?
True. Yep. Yes.
But Tara, Shawn and I chatted recently about how different our experiences were when we joined Trainual. I personally remember feeling like an actual celebrity. Trainual did not hold back pulling out the red carpet when I started. And I got to say, it felt pretty amazing. It made me really excited to dive in, head and heart ready to make ideas happen and to really do my best work. And I think my experience was based largely on your continuous efforts and the passion that you have for creating just an amazing onboarding experience. So naturally, I'm pretty curious, what inspires you about onboarding and why are you so passionate about creating those experiences for new employees at Trainual?
Yeah. Okay. Thanks, Mallory. Actually, it's fun. We're in the middle of onboarding right now. It is my favorite time of the week / month. I always say this, it's like my favorite part of my job, right? I love onboarding so much because it really is the first kind of interaction that employee has with the company, and we can really set that employee up for success. So having like a solid onboarding, having a wonderful experience, I feel like really ties that employee into the culture, ties them into their job and responsibilities, but also helps them ramp up. And again, it's kind of like, you're like when you're dating, it's kind of similar to that. Like during the hiring process, you're in that dating phase, and then you make that commitment. And like, I'm reinforcing that the commitment you made was like the best choice of your life. And that's truly how I want people to feel when they come here. I want them to feel like they belong. They've made a great choice for them, for their family, for their career. And I want to make sure that they have like the tools to be successful, because if they're successful, we're successful. I also get really passionate about making sure that they ramp up quickly. And so I'm trying to do everything I can in that employee experience or in that onboarding experience to really make sure that they like feel the love, if you will, and they know that they've made a great choice and that they've found their place, that they can be themselves and be their best.
I love that. And I'm so excited to dive into some of those nuggets that you shared. I think first, I'm curious, what do you think that Trainual does better in our onboarding experience than any other place you've worked or company that you've worked for?
Yeah, I think we put a lot of time, attention, and care into our onboarding experience. We're very consistent. We have a lot of tools in place that help us create a consistent onboarding, whether it's our Asana tasks that we use. We have an Asana like checklist that we use. We have our scheduling systems that we use. We have our processes in Trainual documented. So we are very process heavy on the experience itself, but then we also are able to customize it and shift it towards our employees' needs. So one of the things that we do that I think is so different and unique is we send an employee a new hire survey before they get onboarded that asks a series of questions. What's your favorite food? What's your favorite color? What's your favorite snack? Where do you buy your coffee? We get all that information for them so that when they show up on day one, it's a very customized experience, like down to what we order for lunch that day for the whole company. It's all around what they love. We also include dietary restrictions here. So we make sure their snacks are dietary restrictions. We want to make sure that people like really know that we know who they are, that we're catering to them as an individual. But again, it's so important to make sure that we're creating the same experience for everyone. And so like having those processes in place, I feel like makes it so that our experience is much better than anywhere else I've ever worked.
I love that.
I was telling Mallory earlier that I wish I could go back in time and maybe move forward in time. I've been here for 5 years. And my onboarding here at Trainual was a little bit different. It was fine. There were only a few of us here in the whole company, and we sat in a room and walked through some Trainual subjects together, have some discussions. But onboarding has come a long, long way since then. And I think you, like you said earlier, have been the author of so much of that. I'd love to hear. Again, we've talked a little bit about some of the things you do. I want to talk about what are the critical key components of an effective onboarding program. If you were to look at this from an outside perspective, what would you expect and what you should be there as part of an effective onboarding process for any company out there?
Yeah. So I feel like there's 4 main components that we really focus on during onboarding here. The first one would be I'm probably going to just say these in any order here. But connections for me is the number one important thing that I focus on during onboarding. I want to make sure that folks are connected to their team, that they make those fast connections. They know who they need to go to for answers. They feel comfortable meeting new people in different departments. One of the ways that we do this, I feel like is a little bit unique, is we have something called our Cheerios buddy. Shawn is actually a Cheerios buddy. Yay, Shawn.
Hey.
Woo. So our Cheerios buddies are there to partner with a new hire when they're being onboarded. It's just someone outside your department, someone you can rely on to make those quick connections with and get those answers for your questions, right? So I feel like that's such a huge thing. I also focus on connections with managers. I make sure the manager and the new hire have time to go through their 30, 60, 90 together. I make sure the new hire has time with each person on their team that they're going to be working on through one-on-ones. And then we have a bigger meet the team event where everyone on the team gets together to hang out and to learn about each other and to get to know each other. So I feel like connections for me is the strongest thing. We also have a lot of presentations. We go through the things that are the most important to us, our core values, our mission, our vision, but down to the basics like benefits. What do events look like here? How many days of vacation do I have? I cover all those really important things in presentation, and then I back that up with the training inside of Trainual. So we have our content in two ways, essentially. They sit there through their presentation. The presentation's very interactive, and then they have the backup in the Trainual content itself that they get kind of dispersed to them throughout their whole onboarding experience. So they have 4 weeks to go through all of their different Trainual content, and I funnel it to them each week. So it's not like they get all the stuff at once. I don't want them to feel overwhelmed, but we give them just bits and pieces throughout the 4 weeks to make sure they're getting what they need. And then, of course, I follow it up with a checklist. So each new hire has a 2-week checklist that they're in charge of completing during their first 2 weeks of onboarding. So I'd say those 4 things really that I focus on.
I love that. I want to dig into a couple of those right there. First of all, you said 4 weeks. The 4 weeks is the onboarding here at Trainual. Why 4 weeks?
Yeah.
And is that the template kind of thing? Oh, everyone should do 4 weeks, or what should that look like? So I'm curious a little bit more about why 4 weeks.
Yeah. Okay. Let me go a little bit further into this. So the first week they're in meetings with me primarily. So they're in meetings with me and they're in meetings with the POPs team. So that's everyone in people operations, and they're in meetings with their direct leader. So we focus a lot on the culture, the vision, the mission, the purpose of the business, all those things, all of just those, who works here, all those questions that we're answering. We really focus on that during week 1. So the content that we're providing them during week 1 is very specific to the company's overall vision and mission. They don't really get into anything role specific until week 2. And so what I like to do is I like to funnel the content that comes from the company over those 4 weeks so it's not overwhelming. It can be very overwhelming if I'm giving them all this content to absorb during week 1. So I really focus on culture, company week 1. They focus on team specific stuff during week 2. And week 2 is where they start to get the content that supports their role. So week 1 is completely just company based. There is nothing that's really about their role in there except for the 30, 60, 90. And then they get that other content throughout just to make sure that it's not too overwhelming. It's hard to consume it all at once. Plus, it would be so boring if they had to go through all that content in 1 week. Can you imagine? They would literally just be glued to their Trainual if they had to go through everything in that first week. And that's not a great experience for anyone.
I think a lot of us on this call right now can know what that experience is like, right? Who have had the fire hose to the face as part of onboarding. So I love this. I love that this is something that we do where, again, oftentimes onboarding is this highly contracted, here's everything all at once because we got to get this stuff done before you get to your real job kind of scenario, right? And that's a mentality that's out there. That's a paradigm that we need to help to shift. So what would you say to someone who's kind of in that mindset of, well, we need to get as much as possible done as quickly as possible so we can get them to their regular job?
So I think that there's just so much content out there that new hires can absorb. And I always like to focus on what is it that they need to know right now to do their job? If there was one thing that I would give them 30 minutes for, for example, we have a new hire with us this week. They are going to be a people manager. I don't have as many hours with them. We're doing a half hybrid onboarding situation. So I had to limit my onboarding experience with him. And I really just focused on what does this person need to know to be successful for the next 2 weeks, right? And then we can focus on the next thing. I think that taking it in smaller chunks and allowing people to digest things, personally, it's just easier to manage, but also it'll be more successful, right?
Yeah. I love that idea of focusing first on what they know, right? And what they need to know to do their job right now. That's a beautiful key right there.
Yeah. And then we just keep layering on.
Yeah.
So we talked so much about how you're creating incredible systems for the new hires, which, if I'm being honest, like made my heart swoon even more for Trainual, because I was like, oh, man, they're an operations company that get operations across all departments, not just siloed to operations, which was how it was in my past life. We live and breathe systematization throughout all of our departments, which is incredible. But aside from creating that systematized onboarding experience for the actual employee, how are you also preparing busy leaders on the other side of that to make sure that they are dedicating the time and attention and just genuine support and authenticity contributing to that experience on the other side?
Yeah, great question. Okay, so not to be a dead horse here, but it does come down to process. So I do have a checklist that I use on the admin side of business where I assign leaders different tasks to make sure that the onboarding for that new hire is what we want it to be. So they have tasks down to create that 30, 60, 90. They have a task to make sure their content is up to date in Trainual. If it's a new manager, I usually will meet with them for 30 minutes or make them a loom. I make a lot of looms, especially later in the day. Get too tired of slacking at that point. But I make them a loom of just walking them through like, hey, here's the stuff that I need from you. Here's the most important elements. I asked them to send me basically like, who do they need their new hire to meet with to make sure that they're ramped up quickly. I'll schedule all those meetings. And then I make sure too that the leader has time blocked on their calendar to sit with the new hire. I think it's extremely important that they make that connection early on. But I think that we do a really good job of making sure that the leaders are successful because we give them the tools to be successful. We communicate a lot with them. We have a Slack channel that's called like onboarding CSM or whatever the position is. And then any kind of communication that needs to happen, we pop it in there so that any of the players that touch onboarding have that information right away. They know what's going on. If I were to be out sick tomorrow, everyone would know exactly what they need to do because it's all outlined there and everyone has bought into what we need to do and what we need to accomplish. And I think that that's the other key too is like, early on, it's that shared purpose, talking to the leader, being like, we both want this person to have an amazing experience. We want them to ramp up. We want them to be successful. Here's what I need from you to like get to that next level. And they're always bought into it. They're always super helpful. And a lot of times when you start working with leaders over and over again, you already know what they're looking for. And I can just customize it real quick on my side because I know that's what they want.
Creating early buy-in is something we talk about so much here. And it's obviously evident in the onboarding experience. It's evident in any process you roll out. It's evident in change management, which we talk a lot about on this podcast. So I really love that you're touching on that. Creating that culture from day one starts with the leaders as much as it does with the content that you're creating.
Yes, it totally does. We also encourage a lot of folks, since we have a hybrid situation, folks can be remote, they can be local. We do encourage folks to come in for onboarding because we typically fly folks in for onboarding. So if they're in the office, we want them to make all those connections. And we do encourage anyone that's local to come in and have lunch with the new hire. It's just a great way to start to build those connections. And also it's great for the leader because then it gives them a little bit of breathing room, if you will, so other people can connect with the new hire as well.
So it sounds like you feel like the ROI on that expense is absolutely worth it.
Oh yeah, for sure. I think so. I think sometimes like when I look at, this is a little side tangent, but when I look at the employee experience in general, when we have those times to connect in person, whether it's a retreat, whether it's bringing people on site, I feel like those can really hold people and make the employee experience so much better for the months that we're not together. So I feel like that is always worth the investment. If you can get the team together for things like lunches or activities, I definitely think that it's worth it.
I'm going to pick on Dan's question here a little bit because it really is an offshoot of what you just described. He says, does any current employee discuss the new info from week 1 with the new employee after the presentations and Trainual subjects? So the connections between the current employees and the brand new employees, what do those look like? We already touched on a little bit with Cheerios, but let's touch a little more on that. I think that'd be great.
Yeah, I think that we do a really good job here. I'm thinking of the all hands. That's the first thing that comes to mind. We have a bi-monthly all hands where we get together as a company and we do go over our mission. We do go over our the mission, the vision. We go over our OKRs, our goals, and those are all things that we hit on in onboarding. So that is a theme that they hear throughout. We also do something a little exciting over here. We have something called the praise channel, which is in Slack, and we call each other out for having great behaviors or having those behaviors that demonstrate our values. And so the folks are seeing those there. I think in general, we go back to that Trainual content quite a bit. We refer back to it a lot. I connect with employees after they've been here for about 3 weeks. I do a little check-in to make sure that they have a full understanding of things and just to answer any questions that they may have. So I feel like that's a great way for us to circle back to some of those things. But as a culture in general, a lot of the core values that we talk about, those kind of things, we talk about them very regularly. We call each other out. I mean, Mallory had said a core value earlier when she was talking about make ideas happen. We call those out. Why? Huh?
It's my favorite one.
Yeah. Okay. My favorite one's no red tape. I say it every time we get into onboarding and I'm like, ooh, my favorite core value. And I say it about every single one and they all laugh. But so I think we're constantly talking about those really important elements as a company in general. And so they do get a lot of face time with those things.
Yeah.
I think.
Go ahead, Marley.
I was just going to give a scenario. Probably many people have seen the movie Mean Girls, not the weird remake, but the OG Mean Girls. And it's walking into the cafeteria as a new person. You're like, oh my gosh, where do I sit? And everybody's like, you can sit with us, right? And it's just trying to figure out who are my people? And it's so weird. And I never felt like that at Trainual. I felt like everybody was in my Slack, hey, you can sit with us. Hey, you can sit with us. We want to be your friend. And I just felt so supported. And I never had that feeling of being oh my gosh, no one likes me here. I don't know who I'm supposed to mingle with. And I guess maybe I'm speaking from an introvert's heart, but it just felt like I just didn't have that awkward experience. And everybody was in my corner from day one, which was so important to me.
Yeah. We do have a really good culture. I feel like that's something that we have that's unique here. And we focus a lot on inclusion here. So we have stuff like affinity groups, we have clubs, and people are very involved. Also Slack channels. There's a lot of involvement in the Slack channels.
Yeah. So one initiative that we have, and again, I've called it out a couple times. I wanted to flesh it out a little more because it's a very intentional initiative. That's our Cheerios group, right? Cheerios buddy.
Yeah.
So Dan, to answer your question from earlier, very specifically, the Cheerio buddy is someone who is directly tied to a new employee, right, Tara?
Yeah.
And you walk through what the expectations of a Cheerio buddy are. Let's chat through that a little bit.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. So a few things that we love from our Cheerio buddies. One is that buddy that I mentioned, right? That they connect with the new hire, they get to know them, they check on them throughout their onboarding experience to make sure that their questions are answered. We also heavily rely on our Cheerios crew to let us know what's going on within their teams and their departments. So what that looks like is if there's maybe a loss in a family, maybe someone is expecting a baby, maybe they're moving to a new location, we rely on our Cheerios crew to come and tell us the news of what's going on with our employees so we can support them on a pops level. We send flowers, we send gift cards, we might send a congratulations card. Maybe if there's a graduation, someone's graduating, they keep us in the pulse of what's really going on with our employees, and then we're able to support employees. So I feel like that's one of the most important roles that they play. One of the more fun roles is if we're doing a retreat or something like that, I'll tap the Cheerios and be like, hey, I need you all to get your creative brains going. We're going to have a photo contest. What should the categories be? What does this look like? So I ping them a lot for any kind of ad hoc culture activities. And they really are just essentially the culture champions or cheerleaders is how I see them. So they're a very important part in the business. And I think they're great. Don't you love it, Shawn, being a part of a Cheerios crew?
Oh, I love it. I love it. I'm meeting with our new employee, Ryan, tomorrow, and I'm looking forward to meeting with him and just kind of answering whatever questions he has and just kind of helping him understand, the culture and how we roll here at Trainual.
Yep.
So,
questions. Should tackle those, Mallory?
Adrian asked a good question. What are your thoughts on remote onboarding versus onboarding in person? Yeah. You mentioned that you fly new team members into the office. In particular, they are hybrid. And I guess it's kind of reverse for them because their ops and people ops trainers are the ones that are remote, whereas like you and Sasha and Marlo are in office most of the time. So what advice would you give to someone that kind of has it the opposite way?
Sure. We've done several remote onboardings. Actually, I think we had one like right around the birthday party kickoff that we had. You can still make the experience just as special and just as fun. I'm just very intentional, I guess, with how I structure onboarding. So if I have an onboarding crew that is remote, I'll shift my meetings just a little bit differently to accommodate for that onboarding. I'll still have the same content, the same kind of meetings. I'll just shift my meetings around a little bit. So for example, when they come on site, we have about 45 minutes to set up their computer, make sure they're in systems, whatnot. I do that obviously remote. It's about 15 minutes. I'm like, hey, just make sure you have Zoom. And then I go through the systems with them just in a different capacity, right? So I customize to being remote versus in person. I still think you can give them a great experience. We've done it several times. At some point, though, I do think it's important if your company allows for this or if you have the space to bring everyone together at least. So we will have remote onboardings if we know in a month or so we're going to have those folks in person and everyone's going to get the chance to mix and mingle with them. But you can still do connections, you can still do presentations, you can still do content, you can still do all of the meat of onboarding remote, and it's totally fine. It's a great experience still.
Awesome. I'm gonna ask one more question because Dan loves to throw us curveballs and just really ask the tough questions. Like he digs right in, which I think will lead us into kind of some of the tougher questions that Shawn's got prepped next. So are you ready for a couple tough ones?
I'm ready. Oof.
Okay. So Dan asks, what happens if you discover that a great skilled new employee, so they bring everything to the table that you would expect them to from a skills perspective, just does not get or care, and those are wildly, I think, different scenarios, about your core values. Do you work with them on trying to align to your core values, or do you just cut them loose immediately? Have you ever experienced something like that before?
That's a great question. Of course, that is a curveball. I'm all about partnering with leaders. So I do watch new hires pretty closely during the first, I'd say, month. If I feel like something might be amiss or might not be a fit, I will circle in leaders right away and say, hey, this seems a little off to me. I would love to get your take on this. You're closer to the person. You're closer to the job responsibilities that we're looking for. You're closer to the hire. Like, what's your insights? What's your feelings? So I typically will flag it and then I leave it up to the leader's discretion what they do with it, right? I think we're very intentional on the very beginning side of hiring. I have never experienced someone coming in and me feeling like they're not a core value fit. I've never had that. I have maybe experienced it where I'm like, maybe this is not the right position. I feel like that's a little bit more common. And then I think it's up to the leader if they're willing to put the time in to coach that person and make them better in their role. For me, though, I feel like we do such a great job at screening folks in the beginning that we haven't experienced that culture fit issue. I feel like you can train people more on a job. I feel like culture, value fit, those kind of things can be a little trickier to train someone on.
I'm thinking about two instances, again, part of our heavy systems here at Trainual, where you can really gauge how someone will work with team members and within their role, that I don't traditionally see elsewhere. And it was a really great part of my experience. The first one that I'm hoping you can talk about is the project that new hires are given. So you kind of get to see how they work before we hire them. And then the second is really like our 30, 60, 90, which kind of sets them up for success and helps them to understand how we operate and what's expected of them, making ideas happen, no red tape. Like they get a chance to kind of show that they're aligned to those things within that time period. So maybe you could walk us through both of those experiences.
Sure. Yeah. So I don't directly do the hiring here. That's my counterpart, Marlo. I do, however, know a lot about hiring. I know enough to get my hands dirty. How about that? So our hiring process, they go through a first screen pop with Pops. So they go through an interview with Marlo. Then they go to a hiring manager to ensure that they have the right skill set for the job. Then they meet with the team, and this is more of a core value check. This is like, hey, I want you to look for these core values in the questions you're asking to either confirm or deny that they are a fit, right? So once they get through that process, then we have a project. A project is very skills-based again. We ask folks to spend a few hours going through some kind of scenario or some kind of project that directly ties to their position. And then they present on that project. So I feel like all of those different, metrics or different milestones really help weed folks out. I've seen lots of people have been very talented, and they'll just push back and be like, not a great core value fit, or I feel like they just would not connect with the team. And that's okay. Honestly, I'd rather know now than later, right? But I do feel like the project's great because it shows the person has a skill set, but then we're also looking for those values throughout the process with other members of the team. Now, the second question, what was it again, Mallory? I'm sorry. I was so focused on that question.
So the second one is the 30, 60, 90-day experience, which it's so interesting. Amber and I have like telepathy right now because I asked it before I saw her question. So we have people that are also asking that in the chat. Yeah. So maybe you could walk us through that.
Yeah. I love the 30, 60, 90. This is surprising. I might be a little older than some people, but I have never had a 30, 60, 90. So for everybody like me, it was my first experience walking into having like everything written out for me. And I was like, this is wonderful. Like, I don't have to try and guess what I need to do. Essentially what it is we break down week 2. These are the deliverables that you need to be or need to have done to be performing in your role. At 30 days, these are the projects or the things that we need to see from you to be performing. And then at 60 days and at 90 days. So it's very black and white, like you're either hitting it or you're not. It's the very basics of the roles, right? And responsibilities that we're requiring from people to do the job, but it's essentially just written out. I had a moment, just going to peel back the layers here and tell you, and very honest experience for me. I had a moment, I was hired in February. We had a retreat coming up in June. I was obviously very overwhelmed, like flying everyone to Park City, like 80 people and learning everyone, like having to Slack people and be like, are you coming to the retreat? If cool, not, thanks, bye, okay. Like it was a very intimidating situation, right? And I am one of those people that I like to perform. I get very nervous if I'm not performing. And I'm like, oh no, I'm like sweating. And I'm like, I don't feel like I'm doing a great job. So I pull my leader aside and I'm like, am I doing okay? She's like, just look at your 30, 60, 90. She's like, as long as you do your 30, 60, 90, you are fine. And I went back and looked at it and I was like, okay, yep, I'm in line. I'm doing exactly what I need to be doing. So it can be very detailed. It can be like, attend these kind of meetings, make sure you do your Asana tasks on time, make sure you've gone through your Trainual content. It could be as simple as that, just to give someone direction of like, hey, this is what your expectations are. It just honestly relieves like the stress, and it also validates that new hire again has made the right choice, and they know what's expected of them and they know how to be successful.
What happens if someone doesn't meet the expectations within the 30, 60, 90-day period?
Yeah. So it goes back to the leader. Again, leaders are really heavily involved in the performance management piece, and it would be a conversation between the leader and the person. We have, different methods for performance management. A lot of times we resort to conversations first and just being like, hey, this isn't fitting right. Like, what do we need to do to change this around? Where is the miscommunication? What can we do to make these things easier? Is there too much on your plate? I feel like it's the first step would be discovery, just trying to figure out what was going on. It could be as simple as communication. I feel like that's a very easy thing to not connect with later on, and especially early on when you're trying to figure things out. I think that in general, employees are trying to do their best. They are there to do a job, and they want to be there. They want to be successful. And I think a lot of times it's figuring out that communication of what works early on. And hey, maybe you need to shift. Like, it hasn't always been roses and sunshine for me, and I just have to have conversations with people and be like, hey, we're not working together the way I want us to be working together here. Like, maybe I shouldn't be slacking you at midnight and expect a response. Like, obviously that's on me. Like, what can I do to make this decision better or this partnership better? And I think it's really just coming to the conversation to the table and having those conversations very open and very candidly, like, this isn't working, but like, what can we do to get you there?
Yeah,
I think
clarity.
sometimes people don't know either, right? They don't know that they're not doing what they need to be doing.
Clarity on those expectations is just paramount, right? I mean, that's, I think, one of the biggest problems is lack of clarity. Oh, and when we're talking about these types of situations here, so having that clarity and then having that, again, that the regular check-ins, that was something that was really impactful for me. That's been part of our culture since day one. I met with Chris Ronzio, our CEO, after a week that I was there. And then again at 30, it was with him, and we just discussed, went through the 30, 60, 90. That was very, very important for him to make sure that we were clear and aligned on what our individual expectations were of each other, right? And so it was this mutual, like, neat thing to know, like, this is what I need to do. It's super, super clear. And having the regular check-ins enabled me to be able to do those things. So I thought that was a great, great call out there. Appreciate that. I've got, here's Brandy. I want to bring it back to a little bit, slightly a tougher question, but on a different angle here. How do you handle when multiple people start that have different roles?
Okay. Yeah, that's a great question. So we do that all the time. Like, next week, I have another cohort coming in. I have 2 customer success managers. I have an account executive. I have an engineering person starting and a paid media specialist. Okay, so they're all over the board, right? I mean, lots of things going on. Biggest thing is a lot of the stuff that I can do with any person in the company. It's not specific to their position, right? But I do have an Asana board, again, coming back to processes. I have an Asana board per leader, per new hire. And so they are in charge of getting me some of those deliverables beforehand. And then I just create custom schedules for everyone. I know it sounds crazy and it sounds like a lot of work, but that's what I do. So I'll do like main meetings with everyone that can attend. And then like we do stuff like the Colby. I don't know if anyone knows what the Colby is, but we talk about the Colby and I'll break it up into specific departments. So I'll have a meeting with just that department, then I'll have a meeting with just that department. So it's kind of a 2-for-1 where I customize some of the things to be specific to the role, but then the majority of the stuff I'm able to do as a group. And then I'll lean on the leaders to come in with that content that's specific to that person's role. So the leader will take over anything that's very specific to the role, the 30, 60, 90, the content, anything that they want that person to be doing, they will take as far as like anything outside of just regular company onboarding. I do set everyone up with one-on-ones though. A new hire typically has anywhere from 5 to 10 one-on-ones with stakeholders in the first 2 weeks. I get those all scheduled and all on their plate so that when they walk in, it's not overwhelming to have to like reach out to the VP of marketing and be like, hey, I need to have a one-on-one with you. I just take care of that for them so that it's an easier experience and a better experience for everyone.
I love that. Here comes another question from Catherine. What do you look for that helps you screen new hires during the culture team interview? Lately, we have people start and then quit within a few months that seemed initially like fantastic hires.
Yeah, it's a good question. I definitely think we need to have one of these for hiring. Like Marlo is such an expert in this area. I don't know what specific questions she asks, but we do use Lover, and I've seen inside of Lover where it will be like she'll have prompted questions and then it will say, does it feel like it fits these different core values? So they're looking for not all 6 core values during their interview. They're maybe looking for 2 or 3. And then in a different interview, they're looking for the other 2 or 3. So like they split them up. Not everyone's looking for the same core values. And it's through a series of different questions, but I don't know exactly what those questions are.
Yeah. Sounds like we're gonna have another episode at some point. That'll be awesome on the hiring process.
I mean, Marlo is such a strong partner in the hiring area. She would be excellent, and I know she would love to do this. So yes, you need to have Marlo. I'll just tell her afterwards. I'll be like, "You're welcome, Marlo." She will do great.
It kind of goes hand in hand, though, right? Like her processes affect your processes, which affect you handing the new hire off to their leaders. So it's like really everybody working together to create that system is super important.
And I will say, like, we don't have everything perfect all the time. When I first started here, I was a little overwhelmed because I went to Glassdoor and we had 5 out of 5 on onboarding. And I was like, oh, okay, so I'm supposed to come in here for something that's already 5 out of 5. part of my 30, 60, 90 is to improve it. I'm like, what am I supposed to do if it's already like the best, right? Like this is so uncomfortable. And actually it's interesting, but there has been like every single onboarding, I change it. It's never been the same from day one. So like what you experience, Mallory, is different what people are experiencing today. I have different trainings that are involved. I've actually taken some of the trainings away. One thing that we had to do though, there was some friction, I would say, between Marlo and I a few months ago where I didn't have some information. Happens, right? But we were able to start a new process where I'm looped in earlier to the conversation. So I'm looped in with hiring managers, with Marlo, with the people that will be working with the new hire going forward. And then that way, we're just communicating all the time. So long story short, there's always things that you can be doing to make the process better and to make trainings better, more efficient, more reliable, more relatable, all those things. So we're constantly changing things here. We're not just like standing with what we've always have or what's always worked. We're always changing it.
Makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah.
I feel like we've talked about a lot of the things we do really well, the things that we do perfectly, right? Like the things that just make us 5 out of 5 on Glassdoor, the things that our employees rave about, the things that they hold on to as memories when we say culture from day one.
Yeah.
But to your point that you just noted, we are not perfect. We're always changing. We're always improving. What do you think the most common onboarding mistake is that companies make?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think it comes down to not putting time into your onboarding, or like having it as an afterthought. Like, oh, we have this new hire that's onboarding. I guess we'll put them here. I guess we'll have them meet with these people. Like not putting the same amount of time and effort that you put into the search, into hiring that person, into the actual onboarding experience. You really can set a person up for success or failure depending on what those first interactions are or those first few days are with the company. So let's put our best foot forward, Let's make sure that we are creating that time, that space. I think, again, like if we're overwhelmed, if we're running way too many things at once, sometimes throwing in an onboarding could be very detrimental because that person is not given the love or the time that they need to get them really ramped up and show them the best side of us. We need to show them the best side of us when we're onboarding. So I think you just need to be really intentional. And I feel like sometimes companies are not. They might be so spread thin because they're, having a bunch of different hats and they need to figure out like this person is a super important hire for them. But they still need to make that time to make sure that they give them the love, ramp them up, all of those things.
Right. You spend all this time investing hours into finding the right person. So why would you not, put your best foot forward? It kind of takes me back to like dating, right? Like you went through all the trouble of finding your person and now you're just going to like leave them to the wayside. No more dates, no more nothing. We're just going to sit on the couch and do nothing for, eternity. It's like, well, that's not really what I signed up for. I still want to be, courted and all of those things. And so, I think that that's really important to make sure that you're consistently delivering the culture day after day after day.
Right. Yeah. Also, if we expect the most out of them, we should also be giving the most that we can give them as well, right? Like it's a two-way street here.
I was just going to say though that it's a two-way street, right? It's an engagement in general. I've always believed this. Engagement is not a one-way thing, right? Engagement is like I will do this, and I say in return yes, and I will do this. It's a partnership, right? So I love that it's a double investment in that regard. Couple things here, and I want to talk a lot about how we measure this whole thing in the first place. Randy did ask from earlier when we've spent so much time creating our core values foundation. Do you have some fun ways to review, or do you just walk through and read through each one?
Okay, great question. Yeah, that's such a great question. I love our core values. Like, yay, core values. I went to our Cheerios crew, and this was one of those fun projects that I, got their buy-in on. And I was like, hey, we need to make videos for onboarding. Who would like to volunteer? So Shawn volunteered. Thank you, Shawn. But we have Cheerios buddies that talk about the core values. So it's kind of a double thing here. We show the core value, we talk through it. Then we show a video from a Cheerios buddy talking about what they experience with that core value, what it actually means to them. So they're getting kind of like the 2-for-1 thing. They're getting the video from the Cheerio Buddy, the content. And then when they go into Trainual itself, there's another video from Chris describing what the core values are. So he also has a video talking about the core values and what they mean to him. And then on a regular, we talk a lot about our core values in general. Like we have them on the wall. People call each other out for living them all the time. It's part of our regular conversation. So I feel like they get like really ingrained in those core values very early on. But I love videos. If you can do videos and have it come from other employees outside of you yourself, I think it means a lot more to them.
So you just mentioned videos. So we do a lot of Loom videos here.
Yeah.
And there's a question from earlier about what are the technology tools that we use as part of onboarding. We've mentioned several here. We talked about Loom. We talked about Asana as our checklist, right? We talked about Lever.
Yeah. Yeah, Slack is a huge one. I spend some time going through Slack with everyone because we have several channels. They can be intimidating. We also use a lot of emojis. I mean, Mallory, do you feel like we use a lot of emojis, like compared to your past work experiences?
Emojis in my past work life were like strictly unprofessional, don't do it. And so when I came here, like it was something that was hard to get used to. And it's funny because I told Jamie, I was like, every time you do like a thumbs up on something that I do, I'm like, is that sarcasm? Like, what does that mean? Like it was the thumbs up debacle.
Yeah, we had that debate too when Adam got hired because he kept giving us the thumbs up. We're like, is he angry with us? And so we hashed that out pretty early, but I've never worked somewhere where we use so many emojis. And so I do talk to the new hires about that too. I'm like, we use a lot of emojis. So in Slack, you'll see these different channels and we love it when you add emojis and you reply. So, I mean, I kind of go through the what's said but not said kind of thing with the new hires. So Slack's a very good tool that we use. We use Zoom. One of my very favorite softwares, this is going to sound so nerdy, is Lattice. Like, I love Lattice. I
love Lattice. And I'm not in people ops, and I'm obsessed with Lattice. I use it for my one-to-ones. I use it for everything.
I always say, let us be friends. It's a very bad joke that I say every onboarding. Marla's like, please stop saying this joke that you say every day, but I do. Yeah, you have your one-on-ones in there. We have our reviews in there. We have like an overview of what we've accomplished during the week, which is so helpful when we're writing our reviews because we can reflect back. We have career ladders in there. I love Lattice. I feel like it's such a great thing. Other tools, Gmail, not as much though as Slack. I feel like we're very Slack heavy as a group.
Dan asked, do you survey new employees about the onboarding process after the process is over? And I'm bringing this up now because that might be an additional tool. I don't know if you use Typeform, which is like our survey tool, or how you go about doing that.
It's actually in Lattice.
Okay.
We do send a survey to new hires after 2 weeks that they've been onboarding, asking a series of questions. Some of them are like, did you have the tools you needed to be successful? How quickly are you making friends? Have you found your best friend? Are you connecting? How available has your leader been? How available has like the POPs team been to answer questions to you? We ask them so many different questions and we ask them every 2 weeks. We typically have like 100% response rate, which is pretty good. And we're usually, the lowest score I've had so far has been a 97. Typically, honestly, we come in around 100. But it's really good insight for me too. If someone feels like they haven't made a best friend, I can then reach out to the leader and be like, hey, this person has not found someone yet that they've connected with at the company. And so like, maybe like, how are things going? How do you feel they're gelling with the team? Do they feel like they're, connected? The other thing I had mentioned that I do a check-in with new hires after 2 weeks, just to make sure they feel like they're in the right role. They feel like the culture is really what's right for them. We go through the Asana task board and then my manager meets with them about a month in and really just asks them, how was your onboarding experience? So she's also digging in to make sure that like we are doing what we need to be doing. And then I ask leaders for feedback as well. So I think that's another thing that we do really great here is we are a very feedback heavy culture. We ask a lot for feedback and we give a lot of feedback.
Yeah, that's a beautiful segue into what I want to touch on next. And that is, how do you know that your onboarding program is working? Right. Yeah. I mean, what are the metrics that you're looking at on a regular basis to determine, hey, yeah, this is working or this is not working and we need to make some tweaks here? What are some of those things? I know maybe some of those feedback surveys come into play there. What else are you looking at as well?
Yeah. So definitely the feedback surveys. In Lattice, okay, here I am again talking about lattice. There is something called the Pulse survey. So the Pulse survey goes out every quarter to a random mix of employees. I can actually look at that mix of employees and I can narrow it down to how long they've been at the company. So I often check, like, how are the folks that have been here for 0 to 3 months? How are they feeling compared to the folks that have been here from 3 to 6? I'll go through the different time zones or quarters or whatever you want to call it to really see what the sentiment is across those new hire buckets to see, how they're feeling about the culture in general. We also ask our employees about the EMPS. On the customer side of things, it's NPS, but on our side of things, it's EMPS. So we have a regular cadence of how folks are feeling about the culture. But again, I can narrow it down to the folks that have been recently hired. I check in with leaders to see how their ramp up time is, how they feel they're fitting in with the culture, how they feel like onboarding has been for them. And so those are the ways that I feel like we measure it on our side, like if onboarding has been successful, not only from the employees' experience and what they feel like, but what we're seeing on our side. And I feel like a lot of times when you have that anonymous feedback in Lattice, it's great. It's anonymous. People are honest and they tell you how they're feeling. But again, I would never want to throw a new hire out there and not have the leader satisfied. So it's important to check with the leader to make sure they're also seeing what they want to see out of the new hire and they feel like it was a good experience for them as well.
Yeah, I love that. I think taking that holistic approach right there is so key. I love the regular pulse checks. I love that, receiving that as an employee, because for one thing, it's that engagement factor, like, oh, they're invested in how I'm doing on a regular basis here, right? And that feels good. And I'm happy to respond to that pulse survey. So that's a great thing there. I want to just kind of wrap up with this question. How, when we do these types of sessions like this, we want to make sure that we're all leaving with things that we can learn with, today, we can walk away with, right? So what onboarding best practices would you say that a company should apply, could apply today? What are some things that I should be looking at right now that I can make some tweaks and adjustments to?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think regardless of the size of the company you have, this is going to sound so basic, a checklist. I feel like a checklist is like the most important thing to do when you're doing an onboarding or ramping one up, because we want everyone, again, to have a very consistent experience and we want to make sure they have the tools to be successful. If I'm onboarding 8 people at once, that's a huge number. For me, it is. But if I'm onboarding 8 people at once, I want to make sure that they're all getting access to Zoom. They're all getting access to Slack. They're all having those one-on-ones with their leaders. And it would be insane for me to try to remember every single detail for every single person. And so I would start with a checklist. I feel like that's the most important thing. And then on the flip side, if you're creating content or wondering, where do I start with this content situation? I always go to what are those questions I'm constantly answering? What are those things that I'm taking time out of my day to respond to and answer? It would be so much easier if I could just say, there's a Trainual for that, or there's content for that, or there's a checklist for that. So whatever those things are that you feel like you're answering constantly, make that process. Save yourself time in the long run by just biting the bullet and doing it. But I always say a checklist. Checklist to me is number one most important.
So checklist for you is the person delivering, facilitating the onboarding.
Yep. And I would say, honestly, the other thing would be buy-in, right? Any stakeholder that's going to have any kind of connection with onboarding or that experience needs to be bought in to the vision, to the goal that you have for onboarding. Hey, let's make this the best experience possible, and this is how we're going to do it. Double tapped in that you agree that this is what we're going to do. You want that buy-in so that everyone is bought into that vision and they know what it is. They can help you execute it.
Awesome.
Well, we love checklists and processes at Trainual. So we've actually got 3 for this crew today, which is a lot. So we've got a hiring checklist that we'll share with you. We have a pre-start checklist that we'll share with you. I know somebody said, what's the touch point between the hiring process and starting the onboarding process, we built out an entire template for that. And if you don't know what the templates are, they are for customers and non-customers. So if you're a customer of Trainual, you can find them in the app. If you are not a Trainual customer, you can find them on trainual.com/templates. But we've got the pre-start checklist, and we have an entire very long and elaborate onboarding template, which Tara and Ariana added our whole secret sauce to our swag as well in there. So that's an update to our onboarding template. So, I mean, everything we covered today and so much more is in all three of these templates that you can start changing and customizing to fit your business and your teams and your core values today. They are ready. So we are going to be sharing them, or you can head to trainual.com/templates, but super excited to give. Oh, I love the hands. The clapping. Yes. It makes me excited when people are like, give me those templates.
They got the thumbs up too.
But yeah, those are going to be available for you guys to start using today. So we're really excited to share those, and just over the moon to finally bring Tara on. I feel like she's always somebody that people just love to hear from. She spoke at our Insider Summit, if you were there last year, and people raved about hearing her talk about onboarding. I think she's the best at what she does. And so we were just super glad to bring her on as a guest today.
I think the main answer to all the onboarding questions is you need to hire a Tara, but no, you can't have ours.
Well, thanks for that, Shawn. I honestly enjoyed my time here. I say it every time. I'm so lucky to have onboarding. Onboarding is like the best part of my job. If I could live in onboarding 24 hours a day, I probably would. I love it so much.
I'm going to share this as a last quote because I think you'll love this one, Tara. So, I truly believe that onboarding is an art. Each new employee brings with them a potential to achieve and succeed. To lose the energy of a new hire through poor onboarding is an opportunity lost. Right?
So true.
Feeling it over here. So thank you. That comes from Sarah Wetzel there. You can see the quote there. We'll provide all of this in the form of a recap at the end of the next few days, along with a recording of the session here today. So, Brandy wants to come and work with you, Tara.
Okay, come on over, Brandy. Let's do this.
It's awesome. You know what? Brandy actually had a few other questions about Cheerios. What we'll do is in our recap that we send out, we'll provide some information about our Cheerios team. And the quick answer to your question, Brandy, she said we only have 36 employees. Do you think we're too small for Cheerios? We started Cheerios when we were 25 people, something like that. Yeah. And it's been awesome ever since then. So we got some ideas for you there, Brandy. We'll definitely share those, all right?
Well, thank you guys for joining us today. It's been a pleasure as always. And we will see you next month for Inside the Process. So be on the lookout for that. But until then, make it a great rest of your week.
Thanks, everybody.